Good evening, everyone. It looks like we've got a few more that have come in, so we got enough. As long as we got two people here, we got enough for a quorum. So we'll have a good class tonight. Hopefully, we got a good number here. I'd like to begin with a prayer, and then we'll get right into our lesson for tonight. Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to be here this evening. We're grateful for time to study your word. We're grateful for the word that you've given us to guide us. We pray that we'll try to fold every part of your word into our lives. Father, be with those who are not able to be with us due to sickness or illness, those that are away traveling. We thank you, Father, again for all things in life. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to ask you to think back a little bit. Now, if you're my age, this may be kind of difficult, but if you're younger, you probably won't have any trouble with it. But think back to this morning when you first got up. Can you remember the first words you said? Think about it for a minute. Now, what about how many words did you speak in your first hour of being awake today? You counting those up in your head? Well, some people, we might not have spoken anything. Others may have an indication they like to talk a lot, and you may have spoken a lot of words. But think a little bit wider and broader. How many words have you spoken so far today? How many different people have you spoken to today? Again, that may be easy. If you just stayed in and you were by yourself all day, it might be an easy answer. But if you've been out and amongst, on the phone and so forth, that could mount up to a lot of people. Another question. Have you refrained from speaking words that you started to speak or wanted to speak? Think about that. Have you spoken words that you regretted speaking as soon as they were spoken? Probably a couple months ago, I saw a little short excerpt on Facebook from a site on there, or a posting on there called Church of Christ Conservative Group. I'm not recommending or not recommending that post, but a man by the name of John Maine, and I don't know if he wrote this or got it from somebody else, had 21 liners and one little scripture reference after each one, and he labeled it, "Don't Open Your Mouth." I thought, that sounded interesting, and I sort of clipped it, saved it, put it back, and I said, I'll work on a lesson one of these times when I have to fill in. I might be able to make something out of that. And I'm going to be a little more direct. I'm titling the lesson, When to Keep Your Mouth Shut. Now, just saying that to some people might be something to start an argument. You tell somebody to keep their mouth shut, sometimes that just is fuel for the fire. And I'm not trying to step on Ricky's toes. He's doing a lesson study in James, and we'll have a little bit out of James. But James 3:6 says, "And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire by hell." Now, if the tongue, or our speech, can be so deadly, why do we use it so much? Well, you say, well, that's obvious. We have to communicate with one another, and speech is how we do that. So, yeah, that's true. Sometimes, and you may know somebody like this, it's kind of like to hear themselves talk. So, they use that as a means of not only communication, but other things. Sometimes we just feel we have something we've got to say, whether it's good or bad. And then when things get silent, have you ever been in a room with a bunch of people and all of a sudden everything gets silent? how long does that last before somebody feels the urge to say something? This is a good interview technique, by the way, no matter what you're interviewing for. I used to be involved in serious accident investigations, and one of the good interview techniques, sometimes people weren't really wanting to talk very much, asked a question and just sit there. They may not want to answer the question, but if you sit there long enough, usually they're going to say something, and that's an opening. So there's a lot of things that we use our tongue for, and I think often we forget how much trouble we can get into, and the Bible warns us about this with our tongue. You know, in Psalms 39:1, David in this psalm, I said, I will guard my ways lest I sin with my tongue. I will restrain my mouth with a muzzle while the wicked are before me. David was saying, you know, sometimes I feel like he felt like he needed to muzzle his mouth so that he did not sin with the things that he said, particularly when the wicked were around him. So let's look tonight at several things about when to keep your mouth shut. And that sounds easy, but it's really pretty difficult. And the first area we're going to look at is one of those. In Proverbs 14:17, a quick-tempered man acts foolishly, and a man of wicked intentions is hated. One of the times we need to keep our mouth shut is in the heat of anger. Now, what are we tempted to do when we're angry? If somebody gets in our face with something, what's the first reaction? We're going to respond, right? We're just going to respond right back. Now, maybe you're a real calm type and you just back off and you think about things a few minutes. But usually our tendency is we want to jump right in. They've just insulted us or something that's got us angry, and we want to respond. We feel like we've got to respond. So if we're in that position, how should we handle things? Can you think of a good example in the Bible of someone that handled a very difficult situation that was pretty calm? You know, the thing that I was always amazed at, and put yourself in this position, put yourself in the position of Jesus when he was being tried prior to his crucifixion. You know, we might feel like in that situation we had a right to be angry and a right to get angry back at those around us, being persecuted for something that we were totally innocent of. Now, I'm not saying if you're put on trial for something that you can't defend yourself, but think about situations in life where you get angry or where you're in a position where you may be accused of something that you're not guilty of. How should you handle that? I always was amazed at how Jesus handled his unjust trials. Let me read a few verses. Matthew chapter 26 and verse 60. But found none, even though many false witnesses came forward, they found none. They were looking for an excuse, a reason to find Jesus guilty. But at last, 2 false witnesses came forward. And they said, this fellow said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said to him, do you answer nothing? What is it that these men testify against you? But Jesus kept silent. And the high priest answered and said to him, I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, it is as you said. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Notice the direct answer, but calm, not accusing them, not getting upset, if you will, just telling them the answer they wanted. Then the high priest tore his clothes, saying, he has spoken blasphemy. What further need do we have of witnesses? Look, now you have heard his blasphemy. What do you think? They answered and said, he is deserving of death. Then move on later. Matthew 27, verse 11. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus said to him, "It is as you say." And while he was being accused by the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear the many things they testify against you?" But he answered not one word. So the governor marveled greatly. Jesus didn't bother to answer the false accusations. He answered the direct question, "Are you king of the Jews?" He answered the question, "Are you the Son of God?" in the other trial. He answered them plainly and directly. But all the false accusations, he didn't bother to get up and argue with them. And the reason the governor marveled, because I'm sure he had many trials before him, and people brought before, they were anxious to get up and argue back and try to defend themselves. Psalms 59:19, "You give your mouth to evil and your tongue to flames of deceit." When we speak in anger, very often it leads to some kind of evil or sin. I don't know that this individual, and I definitely would not recommend this individual for anything else, but he had one statement that was put on there by another person that we used to support here, Steve Waller. He copied this and put it on his post the other day. This person wrote, "A moment of patience and a moment of anger saves you 100 moments of regret." In other words, when you get in a situation, if something makes you angry, take time. You know the old thing, stop, count to 10 before you respond. It's a real good way to do, and it's hard to do because, again, you feel like a desire that you want to answer. Somebody just gave you a false accusation, and you want to answer that right now. But it's better to wait a little bit and think things through so you do things in the right manner. What about situations need to keep your mouth shut if you don't have all the facts? Now, this is something that we see all the time. You get, and sometimes you're guilty of it yourself, I would hazard a guess. You get a piece of information and you automatically form a conclusion based on that piece of information. And we need to be very careful about how we handle that. Proverbs 18:13, "He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him." Now, one thing you have to realize is, what is a fact? Now, people think things are facts that aren't facts. For one thing, you hear somebody say something and you record that as a fact. Now, it's a fact that he said it. It's not a fact necessarily that what he said is true. So you have to get some information. Sometimes what you see can be misleading. Go back to my accident investigation days. You interview 15 witnesses to something that happened. And this person standing here says, "thus and so." And the person standing over here said they saw thus and so. They don't agree. Well, you go and look where they were standing, and they both may be right. Based on where they were at, they saw something a little bit different because that person had a big beam right in front of him. He couldn't see everything. But you know what our mind does? If we see this and we see this, and it's logical that this is in the middle, guess what our mind does to us? It fills that in, and we think we saw the whole thing. So you have to be careful about getting facts. Know that it's a fact, not a conclusion of somebody else, not something that they said. You can say that Joe Blow said X, and that's a fact if you've got it recorded and witnesses. But what he said isn't necessarily a fact. As we think about that and go through that, again, just like with anger, when we think we get a fact or two and we want to draw a conclusion, step back, think a little bit, get a little more information, make sure you know everything, know the whole story before you take and draw a conclusion or go further with it. And this sort of goes along with it. Keep your mouth shut when you haven't verified the whole story. In Deuteronomy 17:6, the Bible knew this type of feature. It says, whoever is deserving of death shall be put to death on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, shall not be put to death on the testimony of 1 witness. In other words, what's trying to say there, they even realized in the Old Testament law that you need to make sure you have everything in line. You've verified everything before you go not only accusing somebody, but executing sentence on them. Independent verification is needed, and sometimes this is pretty hard to find. You have to try to get verification from people that don't have anything to gain. An example, if you ask me if an Alabama receiver caught the pass based on my perception of the instant replay, guess what? You better go find an independent observer, because I'm likely to be very biased. So as we look at things, before you've verified the story, don't go out shouting an opinion or making matters worse or saying something to somebody else about it, saying this is what happened, when you really haven't verified everything yet. Now, when you're making statements relative to God's commands, where do we verify the source there? We verify it with the Bible. There you've got a very solid place to go and verify, is that true? Somebody gets up, in fact, we're admonished to go and make sure we study and look and see if things are true that were said. You hear a preacher preaching, and he makes a statement, and you kind of scratch your head, and I don't know if I read that before or not. So you go and you get your Bible and you verify. You look at the source and make sure that what's said was true. So we need to make sure that we have a trusted source on anything said of spiritual matters, and we have that source, and that's the Bible. We should keep our mouth shut when we say what should not be said. There are times you really shouldn't say all that you know. And yet, it's real tempting, isn't it? You find out some information about something. Maybe it's a situation within the body of Christ. And you're sort of privy to some of that, but you really don't know the whole story. Or you may know the whole story, but it's really not something for public knowledge. And yet, you get in a conversation with a couple other people from the congregation, and they start talking. They say, hey, what about so-and-so and something? You're just bursting. You know something about that. And often, without even thinking, you'll divert or can put some of that information out there. And when you let something slip, that partial information that you may have given may stir up a storm. And those kind of things result in congregations being split, all kinds of difficulties and troubles, and really gives the elders heartache because then they're caught in the middle of trying to resolve a situation. What about a Bible situation? Remember a guy named Samson? He finally let some information slip that caused him a lot of trouble. Let me read a few verses. Remember, he was involved with Delilah, and one of her missions was to get information on how to defeat him. And in Judges 16:16, it came to pass when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him so that his soul was vexed to death. Sometimes people can nick away at you. Just keep asking, keep pestering to try to get information. He went on, then he told her all his heart and said to her, no razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak like any other man. When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up once more, for he has told me all his heart. So the lords of the Philistines came to her and brought the money in their hand. Then she lulled him to sleep on her knees and called for a man to have him shaved off the 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength had left him. Sometimes you know things that shouldn't be said to anybody else or only to certain people. And when you let that information out beyond that, all kinds of trouble can come about. Very tempting, and often people will tempt you to do that, but that's one of the times you should just keep your mouth shut. What about if words you have would be a poor reflection on the Lord, your church family, friends, family? In 1 Peter 2:21, we read, For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow in his steps, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth, who when he was reviled did not revile in return, when he suffered he did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. You know, we talked about this when we were talking about anger and taking time to compose ourselves, if you will, before we strike out. But, you know, sometimes our actions and our speech can cause trouble to others that's really not called for and is not consistent with Christian conduct. You know, if we're out amongst the public and we start running down a member of the church, what kind of Christian example does that set? If you go out and you say, you know, people like to talk about preachers, you know, you go out and among the community out here and you start talking about what you think are the shortcomings of the preacher at the church, what kind of example does that set for those out there? They say, we know they don't even respect the person that's preaching for them. Not a place I want to be. You know, we have to be very careful in the words we say, that we don't want to strike out a poor reflection on the church, on God himself, on our friends or family in front of others. You know, some things are things that should be handled personally, one-on-one. Psalms 52:2, your tongue devises destruction like a sharp razor, working deceitfully. You love evil more than good, lying rather than speaking righteousness. You love all devouring words, you deceitful tongue. You know, lies and partial truths probably harm more people's perception of the church than you might think. We have to be careful how we talk about things to others and talk about our friends and family as well. The other one I didn't think about so much till I saw it written out. You should keep your mouth shut when you're tempted to joke about sin. Now, you say, well, who jokes about sin? Well, just listen around you. Sin is joked about. It's you hear it sometimes in conversations with others. Sometimes nothing harmful is really meant by it, but they joke about something that's sinful. If you ever hear any parts of stand-up comedians on TV or something, it's often included there as something to joke about. One thing, if you take sin lightly, what does that do? It makes you a little more perceptible to it, doesn't it? If you think, well, sin's just something to joke about, it's not really serious, what harm does it do to tell those kind of things? Matthew Henry, in his commentary relative to this, he said, how wicked people are hardened in their wickedness. They make a mock at sin. They make a laughing matter of the sins of others, making themselves and their companions merry with that for which they should mourn. And they make a light matter of their own sins, both when they are tempted to sin and when they have committed it. So we really need to be careful about taking sin lightly and making joke of sin. You say, well, I try not to sin in my life, but I don't see any harm in speaking lightly about it in a conversation as long as we know we're just kidding, But that can well within us to the point to where we don't take it very seriously. This one should be obvious, but we should keep our mouths shut when we're saying words that we may be ashamed of later. I think probably everybody, I would hazard to say, at some point in your life have said things that later really you were kind of ashamed that you were involved in saying those words. And, you know, usually there's not an easy way to rectify what we say later. It's really hard to take words back. You can say you're sorry to people. You can go and explain that you didn't really mean what you said at the time. And those are good things to do. Don't get me wrong. We need to repent when we do something wrong or something that may be harmful. But it's still hard to take those words back. And some people won't ever let you forget some of the things that you said. You know, we have to be careful, particularly around non-Christians, that we keep our mouth shut if we're going to say something that might give the wrong impression. Proverbs 17:27, he who has knowledge spares his words, and a man of understanding is a calm spirit. Even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace. When he shuts his lips, he is considered perspective. I remember a time, and it's been a long time ago, but I was talking to a guy I work with, and he really didn't believe baptism was essential for salvation. But he kind of wanted to talk about it one day, so I was trying to tell him why it was. And, you know, you get around and you get talking to a guy and you try to think, you know, how can I get kind of next to him so that he kind of believes what I'm saying? So before long, my words kind of became convoluted. And I got thinking about that at night as I was trying to go to sleep. And I said, you know, I don't know if I conveyed to him that baptism is essential for salvation or not. So I had to go to him the next day and say, no, I think maybe I gave you a misconception. And I told him, you know, straight out. And he said, yeah, I understood that, but I don't know whether he did or not at the time. So, and then he dropped it after that and didn't want to talk about it anymore. So you have to be careful when we we need to speak things in love, but we need to be direct and truthful at the same time. And when you try to get a little wishy-washy to make them understand something a little more clear, it becomes muddled up and they don't understand it all. And you may give them the wrong impression at all. Harris was quoted, 2 badges of a wise man, restraint and calmness of temper. You know, as we restrain ourselves, like it says there in Proverbs, you know, even a fool can be counted as wise sometimes when he holds his words and doesn't say anything. You know, if you don't know anything and you start talking, pretty soon people realize you don't know anything. So you need to make sure that you be wise about what you say. You should keep your mouth shut when it's none of your business. And that's a hard one because we like to know everybody else's business, don't we? If you're really honest with yourself. All you have to do is listen to people a little bit, and you'll hear somebody's name mentioned, and you know, they heard something, or you know, something simple like, hey, I heard so-and-so's in the hospital. What's wrong with them? You know, what's the deal? How serious is it? You know, on and on. They want to know everything. And that's said out of concern and so forth. But you have to be careful that you don't get too far, because what happens next is we get into that gossip situation. You get a little piece of information, you go tell it to somebody else, and then they tell it again, and they tell it again. You've all played that game growing up where you start something on one side of the room and go around and see what happens when it gets to the other side. That's exactly the way it is with everyday stuff. And a lot of times you repeat what you heard, and we talked about facts a while ago. Some of it may be opinions and not facts, or conclusions based on opinions, and so you don't really get the right information. So sometimes be willing to, on things that you get to a point, it's not just caring, but it's really none of your business. Just let it go until, if people want in, make yourself available to help people if they need help. But there's a point beyond which you get into them not wanting to share with you. Remember that, if we get false information and spread it, then it's devastating most of the time to everybody involved. And there's a fine line there. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying there's a time, again, we just need to be quiet about it. Keep your mouth shut when you're tempted to tell an outright lie. You may say, well, the Bible tells us not to lie, but let's face it, in the everyday world around us, most people think lying, particularly about small matters, is no big deal. And yet, the Bible tells us there won't be any liars in heaven, so, lying is a serious business. Proverbs 4:26, ponder the path of your feet and let all your ways be established. Not telling a lie in certain situations can be so very, very tempting. You think you're in a situation and you're saying, if I just fudge a little bit, all this goes away and nobody's hurt. So, what's the big deal? So we kind of take what we call a little white lie and kind of go to one side of that straight path that we should be on. And then what happens? Well, somebody questions something, and all of a sudden you've got to tell another lie to try to make the first lie line up right. And that can go on and on. Sometimes you can get by with a little white lie and everything goes away, but often that just kind of snowballs on you. There are times when you may be called upon to, if you will, to appear in court. I've had to appear in court on cases before. And there you want to make sure that you're telling the absolute truth. But while you're doing that, you also know some people appear in that court for the same trial you're going on, and they're saying things that aren't the truth. So all you can do is to make sure that we try to stay on that straight and narrow path and not depart from what we know is the truth. And try to keep yourself from going into those areas where it's conjecture on your part. You don't really have any facts. If you just stick to what you absolutely know from your own verification, then you're okay. Proverbs 13:5, a righteous man hates lying, but a wicked man is loathsome and comes to shame. And you all probably are very familiar with Proverbs 6:16. These 6 things the Lord hates. I'm not going to read, and 7 are abomination to him. I'm just going to read verse 17. A proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood. A lying tongue there is grouped for the hands that shed innocent blood. So again, a lie is something to be concerned about. So if you're tempted to tell a lie and you don't want to tell the truth, just keep your mouth shut. And I know that's pretty blunt. How about if your words, and this gets into the lie a little bit, if your words will help somebody or damage somebody's reputation. Now, if it helps somebody and it's the truth, that's good. But if you're going to say words that's going to help or damage someone's reputation, that can be a serious matter. Proverbs 16:27, an ungodly man digs up evil, and it is on his lips like a burning fire. Now, there are times, we mentioned a while ago, if you have to testify in court and you know that the truth is going to hurt somebody, you're still going to have to tell the truth. That's just the way it is. So you have to be truthful in those situations. However, going around saying things just to hurt someone or to try to dig up things to hurt someone, this goes back to sometimes the anger thing and the retribution. Somebody makes you angry and you think, I'm not going to say anything right now, but I know when to say the right things that will get even with them. So if you're going to say things that's going to hurt someone, try to hold those back unless you're in a situation where you have to tell the truth about something. Psalms 43:3, who sharpen their tongues like a sword and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, bitter words. Your words really need to be those that will help a person correct evil and not contribute to it. You know, and this is sort of closely related, but we all have friendships of various types with various people throughout our lives. Some have been close friends, some may be casual friends. And if we're not careful, our words can destroy those friendships. And maybe through your life, this often seems to happen when you're young, adolescent stages and so forth. Friendships come and go, but often friendships are destroyed just by what people say. If you find a situation where a friend has a problem, rather than saying things that might hurt them and destroy that friendship, as a Christian, we need to try to go to them and help them in a positive manner instead of a negative manner. We need to try to have words spoken to friends that are helpful, not hurtful, or meant to hurt in any way. And that's where the hard part comes in, because sometimes the thing you think is going to help somebody is the words that might help them may actually have the opposite effect. About all we can do is to pray about it and do the best we can in trying to be positive and help people. The other one's kind of tricky here. Keep your mouth shut when you're feeling critical. Now, we're told to give corrective and critical comments to people to help them and help them along. And, in school you have professors, and they're supposed to be critical of your work to help you and so forth. So you say, well, what's wrong with trying to help people out? Well, sometimes it's how we say it or the words we say to try to help somebody. A person can come to you to help you with a problem where maybe you need a little correction and a little guidance, and they can do it in a way that you will accept it and actually try to get better, or they can come at you in a way that's just highly critical and just drive you away, and they won't listen to you at all. How you do that is one that I think we kind of learn through trial and error through life. Some people are really good at approaching people in a way that they can help improve them. And other people, they're just typically people that come at them full bore, head on. And often, unless the other person's sort of that way, you may drive them away. So if you're feeling critical and you can't handle the situation, you may need to find somebody that can approach them in the right way. This next one you may think is kind of funny, but keep your mouth shut if you can't talk without yelling. Now, that's difficult for some people, because some people naturally, you may think, almost yell. And that's just the way they are. They don't mean anything by it. But it's sort of how you approach things again. And when I was in Boy Scouts deal, and I tried to do everything, and I was in the Order of the Arrow, and one of the things, the first stage of the Order of the Arrow you go into, you go through all these ceremonies and things, and you get an Indian name at the end. And I don't remember the Indian name, but I remember the translation of it, and mine was Loud-Voiced Leader. That's the name they gave me. And I guess that was probably justified at the time. I was not one that held back when trying to lead, and often my voice was raised. So, but you have to be careful with that, because a lot of people, when they hear a loud voice, they think, you're angry at me. And that may not be true at all. You're just trying to make yourself heard. You want to stress something, and your voice raises when you're doing that. So you need to try to take into effect who you're talking to and how they'll relate to it. This is something that maybe we all could do. Keep your mouth shut when it's time to listen. Do we ever talk so much that we don't listen at all? Or do we, and I do this sometimes, somebody starts talking and then I'll jump in and finish what they were saying and then give them the answer? You just don't listen to them really. You think you've already drawn the conclusion of what they were going to say. It may not have been right. And then you're going to tell them what you think they were asking, and you may be wrong again. And so it's sometimes hard to communicate when you do that. We must make sure that when we're talking and not listening, that we're giving good advice, and we make sure, particularly in matters of the Bible, that we really hear what the person is saying so that we can properly respond with the truth. An individual, and this is kind of strange, but I thought the comment was good. Individual that goes by the stage name of Pleasure P. He's an R&B singer and songwriter. He said the biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. And I think he had something to say there. We're always anxious to give our answer back, and that's why sometimes we jump in before the other person's even done. Another individual, not sure the exact author of this, said, "Set a guard over my mouth, Lord, keep watch over the door of my lips." He was a person that knew that he had a tendency to talk when he shouldn't have talked, and he's saying, I need something over my mouth to guard me and keep me from doing that. I won't say much about this, but keep your mouth shut. If you already said it more than one time, it becomes nagging then. Sometimes that's not true. I forget things a lot at my age now, and sometimes you need to tell me more than one time, and it's not really nagging. But you can just hound a person over and over again, so you have to be careful on that. Keep your mouth shut when you're tempted to flatter a wicked person. Proverbs 24:24, he who says to the wicked, you are righteous, him the people will curse, and nations will abhor him. It seems that many say today, they take what God says is wicked and say what the world said is right. We need to be very careful about flattering somebody that is doing wrong and making them think that what they're doing wrong is right. And sometimes you may be tempted to do that because it's easier, You don't want to upset that apple cart. You don't want to get into a discussion. So you just kind of go along and say, everything's fine when you know it isn't. Keep your mouth shut when your words are not what God commands. Remember back Moses, last when he kind of lost his temper, God told him to go and take care of the people's desire there in a certain way, and instead he shouted off at them and did things different than what God said, and he paid a price for that. When God has told us to do something, then don't say it a different way or say we're going to do it a different way. About to run out of time, but I wanted to draw a conclusion. A couple things. One, Kathy Pollard, the wife of Neil Pollard that we supported a long time ago, some of you may remember him. She adapted from Proverbs 10:19, which reads, "In the multitude of words sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise." She said, sometimes I should use glue stick instead of chapstick. In other words, there are times that she needs to keep her mouth shut. We know we've got a new year coming up. You're going to be speaking a lot of words this new year. And maybe you've already totaled up how many words you've spoken today, but you're going to be talking a lot. So let's make sure that we keep quiet when we should and we talk in the right way when we should. I'm going to go back to Winnie the Pooh. Winnie is marching along through the words with Piglet, and Winnie says, sometimes my greatest accomplishment is just keeping my mouth shut. May we all have great accomplishments this coming year. Thank you.